After church, this time of year, going to that favorite pumpkin patch during church. In the middle of a busy highway, a senseless loss of life occurs. Let me see exactly what details that I can recall and pass along to describe exactly just how tragic and senseless this was, and at the same time, how intentional it was. Our victim, 61 years of age, Stephen Powers, and his adult grandson were in their work van northbound on Highway 301 approaching Bloomingdale Avenue. They see a black Mazda driven by our homicide suspect, Kentavious Gholston, 26 years of age, watching him drive reckless in and out of traffic. At some point, our homicide suspect cuts off our victim, and then immediately after he presses the horn, "Hey, you got too close to me, you cut me off," like most people would do. "Hey, I'm here, I'm upset, you cut me off." He decides to start brake checking our homicide victim. At some point, we believe and feel that he even thinks that now this person, our homicide victim driving the white van, has struck his car. So at that point, in the middle of the road, he throws it in park, and our homicide victim at this point, the driver of this van with his grandson, sees this as an opportunity. "I'm going to go tell this young man, I'm going to go give him a piece of my mind." As he exits the car, he walks up to the driver's side where Kentavious is sitting, and Kentavious exits the car. Our driver, our homicide victim, is irate at this point. He lets the emotions get the best of him at this point. He goes to throw a punch at the younger homicide suspect, driver of the black Mazda, and he falls to the ground. As he's fallen to the ground, he does like most of us do when we unexpectedly fall to the ground. We're able to break the fall by falling on our knees and our hands. Our homicide suspect, seeing that the elderly gentleman, who's helpless at this point, who's defenseless at this point, already on the ground, bracing himself, trying to get his wits about him, trying to maybe get back up, our homicide suspect fires 3 rounds into his back. He waits for a moment. He sees that he's still alive, so he fires 2 more rounds, striking him a total of 4 times in the back. Think about that. He's on his hands and knees. He braced himself. He gets fired upon 3 times. He's already defenseless. He falls all the way to the ground. Our homicide suspect, seeing that he's still alive, says, "I got to finish the job." Goes and fires 2 more rounds, striking him another time, possibly inflicting that fatal blow to our poor elderly driver and now homicide victim in this scenario. After this occurs, immediately after this occurs, the grandson gets out. He's just watched his grandfather get executed. He gets out of the car. Our homicide suspect looks and points the gun at him too. He goes like this, scared to death. "Hey, listen, I don't want anything to do with this. Don't shoot me." Our homicide suspect gets back in the car, flees through traffic, running a red light in order to flee the area and evade arrest at this point. There's a lot of speculation on how we came into contact and how we learned to identify who our homicide suspect was. There was a debit card that dropped during this altercation. We were able to, through investigative means, track this debit card back to our homicide suspect. So when we showed up at the last known address that we have, knocked on the door, his mom, who the car belongs to, who the debit card belongs to, who he uses both majority of time of the car and the debit card, isn't extremely cooperative. She's on felony federal probation, but she is cooperative to an extent where she confirms who our homicide suspect is at this point. So yesterday we have him identified. We're still working through the case. We had, at this point, put it out to the media. Couple thank yous. I'll stop here for a couple thank yous. Thank you to the media. Thank you to the media for putting it out that we have an active case. We have an armed and dangerous suspect that's still at large here. We put that out. The media helps us. They put it out. Now we have a phenomenal community that we serve that sees that we're looking for this information, and here comes a flood, and I mean a flood of cell phone video. One's even a dash cam video that we received that shows our homicide suspect fleeing through the red light, where we get a good picture of the tag. So the evidence in this case is extremely overwhelming, leading until today. Today we see there that there's a preparatory school across the street where this occurred. By chance, there's cameras here. Maybe they've captured this incident. They did capture the incident. Crystal clear video footage of the entire incident and what I am describing here today. So thanks to this community, thanks to our media partners for helping us. It was the little bit of icing on the cake. We already had them identified, but now we have this mountain of overwhelming evidence to say, hey, we have who we're looking for. He hears that we're looking for him too. There's no secret. So this morning, as they're getting ready to get arrest warrants, and I'll let our state attorney talk about that here in a moment. As we're working through charges and getting arrest warrants together, we get a phone call from his attorney. Hey, he's going to turn himself in. We're going to come to the office. She shows up with our homicide suspect at 2 p.m., willing to give an interview. Remorseful? No. Cooperative? He describes the incident to the T and admits to committing it. So, again, we don't need a confession at this point. We already have way more than enough to convict anybody of any type of crime, especially a crime as gruesome as this one is, and tragic and senseless as this is. So he comes in, describes what happened. We can't find the murder weapon. We can't find the car. We're still looking for that. He describes the apartment complex where he left the car. We're able to make contact with the car. He took the car, parked it in a random apartment complex. He took the tag off that car, and we did observe it and see that, confirm what we already knew. There was no damage. Our victim never struck his car, and why he got irate and maybe acted as angry as he did, I don't know. Nothing would excuse or justify what he did to this poor elderly gentleman. But he also says that the time now, it's important to us, it's important to the case, but more important, we want to make sure that this firearm that he used, we know it's a 9mm. He describes it as a Glock semi-automatic firearm that he had. And he describes to the point where after he dropped the car off and tried to scrub the car a little bit by removing the tag, that he also disassembled the firearm and threw it into a retention lake pond area where the car was parked. We immediately sent the dive team out there, and they had to suspend the search because of darkness. They'll be back out again in the morning. Again, at this point, it's more of a concern to make sure that this firearm isn't able to be reassembled and fall into the wrong hands, maybe even that of a child. So we'll be back out in the morning to make sure that we're able to recover that firearm. I'd be remiss if I didn't once again talk about the phenomenal work. I had a press conference early this morning, and I talked about being confident that an arrest was imminent. And I wasn't able to say much at that time because I didn't want to affect or mess with the integrity of the case because it was progressing so well. This happened just after 2 o'clock yesterday. The arrest was just after 2 o'clock today. To be able to piece this together in such a busy intersection on a busy roadway with a lot of moving parts, and have the person held responsible that, again, committed this senseless loss of life, is absolutely nothing short of incredible. To every detective and deputy that worked on this case, thank you for your dedicated efforts, especially on a Sunday afternoon, to make sure that you were expeditious in not only bringing comfort to this family. This comfort was visibly shaking. They knew that this individual was out there. They didn't understand why they shot their loved one, and they were afraid to talk to the media early. They were afraid to be seen or identified because they thought he might be coming after them now. They want justice now, like any of us would. And we assured them that justice is what they got. So I left a message with his brother. That's who we have for next of kin. I wasn't able to talk to him, speak to him directly. I'm waiting for him to call me back. But our detectives were able to notify him, did speak with him, notify him and his loved ones that we did make an arrest in such a short period of time, and that no, there is no risk of their lives. There is no further risk to this incredible community that we serve. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to our state attorney. Before I do, I just want to say thank you. Madam State Attorney Susie Lopez, this is no different than any case. On a Sunday where we want to be expeditious. We know it's a Sunday. We know it's family time. And to bring your team in and be able to get them working in conjunction with us and to be able to stand here in such a short period of time and make notification that this community, this family is not at risk anymore and that justice will be served. It speaks volumes of you and your entire team. Thank you for being here this evening. Thanks for leaving a charity event early to come here and stand with us and stand with law enforcement like you always do. And this time I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Sheriff. I'm Hillsborough County State Attorney Susie Lopez. I stand here this evening proud of the work that the Sheriff's Office and my team has done, as the Sheriff said, in just 24 hours. Every day of every year, every minute of every day, there is a prosecutor on duty who handles cases just like this. So yesterday, a beautiful Sunday afternoon in Hillsborough County, the prosecutor accepted the call from the Sheriff's Office, and for those 24 hours was working hand in hand with the Sheriff's team to bring justice for this family. At just after 2:15 in the afternoon, this crime occurred, and this crime was a result of road rage. Everyone's been frustrated in traffic before. We all get frustrated, but this defendant chose to take it to the next level. He should have stopped, counted to 10, taken a breath, but instead he chose to take action, and he ended the life of a 61-year-old grandfather who was in his work van with his grandson, who I understand is a veteran. As I stand here tonight, I am pleased to report that through this hard work that the sheriff has mentioned, this defendant has been charged with 1 count of second-degree murder with a firearm. That is punishable by up to life in prison and carries a 25-year mandatory minimum prison sentence. He's also charged with aggravated assault with a firearm because, in fact, he pointed the gun at Mr. Powers' grandson. After Mr. Powers was killed, he pointed the gun, this defendant pointed the gun at his grandson. He's also charged with tampering with physical evidence. He's also on probation out of Hernando County. He's on probation for domestic battery by strangulation. He is not allowed to have a gun. And yet yesterday afternoon at that very busy intersection with so many people going through it, this defendant decided to take the law into his own hands and have a gun that he was not legally allowed to have. To Mr. Powers' family, we stand with you. We will be here to get justice for you and for Mr. Powers. What's going to be happening in the next few days is the Assistant State Attorney who was on duty is actually at the office right now. I spoke to him on my way here, and he is drafting a motion for pretrial detention. That motion will be the state's motion to hold this defendant at no bond during the pendency of this case. As the sheriff said, there's been a lot happening in the last 24 hours, and we're still working. We're still working to bring justice for Mr. Powers and his family. That motion, I believe, will be heard sometime in the next several days. This tragedy was completely avoidable. This defendant could have done a number of things, but instead, he executed a 61-year-old grandfather in the middle of a busy intersection. Through the hard work of detectives, through the hard work of the public as well, people were willing to step up and lend a hand to help solve this investigation. The sheriff's team was able to make an arrest this afternoon. Sheriff, thank you for your work, My team will take it from here to get justice for the Powers family. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam State Attorney. At this point, either one of us, ask any questions you may have.
In that interview that you had with him at 2 o'clock today, did he or his attorney try to make a self-defense argument? And if so, why were your investigators not buying that?
Yeah, great question. At no point did this homicide suspect or his attorney ever allude or try to justify his actions by claiming self-defense, stand your ground, or anything else. I think he knows, okay, you're 26 years old. You have a 61-year-old gentleman who was the aggressor at some point. You pushed him to the ground. The threat's over. To execute him by shooting him 3 times, and then when he falls to the ground, see that he's still breathing, to finish him off and shoot at him 2 more times, striking him a total of 4 times. I don't know how they could ever make a claim that it's anything but homicide.
And just to clarify, who threw the first punch? Was it the suspect or the victim?
Our homicide victim was actually the aggressor. He was upset. He got out of the car and walks up after being brake checked and the aggressive actions by our homicide suspect. He approaches the car. As our homicide suspect gets out of the driver's side of that car, our elderly gentleman throws a punch, misses, he redirects him and pushes him to the ground. The threat's over at that point. But at that point, pushing him to ground was justified. He was the aggressor. Our victim was the aggressor at this point. But again, did it warrant being executed? Violence has no place in this community, and we must never get desensitized to a traffic altercation, a traffic disagreement resulted in a loss of life. That we should all be outraged. And someone that's not even allowed to be in a possession of a gun has a firearm and used it again, showing once again he can't control his anger. Great question, and I'm sorry. I know there was a lot of details. I was trying to paint a picture here. Our homicide suspect, as he was brake checking our homicide victim, thought that at one point they got so close that our victim struck his car. That's why he threw it in the drive. I think at that point, our victim just beat him to the punch of getting out the car before he got out of the car and started approaching his car. Again, wrong on the elderly gentleman's part, right? Our victim shouldn't be throwing a punch towards anybody, but goes to throw a punch, misses. But never in a million years could you ever justify or think it's okay as this helpless, defenseless elderly gentleman's on the ground on all fours trying to get his wits. He was just pushed to the ground by a much younger gentleman, to execute him and then see that it didn't work, so you shoot him a couple more times.
So the suspect was on probation, wasn't able to have a gun, so that's a felony. Can you talk about his criminal record and should he even been on the streets at all?
Yeah, far as I know, this is the only thing he has in a criminal record. He has a domestic violence. Again, not just a domestic violence charge, but a felony, a domestic violence charge by strangulation. He's not a convicted felon, but part of his probation is to not be in possession of any type of weapons or firearms. My message to the community is there's more people moving here every day. We're all going to get frustrated in traffic. Take a deep breath. We should never let our emotions get the best of us. We should never be comfortable with the fact that emotions ever turn to violence because of a disagreement in traffic. We all have to be more patient. The more people move here, the more patient we have to become. Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening. It's nice being out here. We're not sweating tonight.